change the way the world works and to remove
testing. start? Where's the little thing here? I know how to do it. Sure, if you want. Go ahead.
This one, maybe this one. It's just a cable.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
This is.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to SUSS Inclusive Blockchain Conference today. Today, we are very honored to have Mr. Juan Llanos with us. He's going to give us a keynote speech titled, How Blockchain and Enlightened Policy Can Solve Global Poverty. Being a seasoned financial compliance expert and certified anti-money laundering specialist, Juan Llanos is a well-sought-after speaker, startup mentor, and advisor in AML and regulatory compliance strategy. He speaks and writes extensively about virtual currencies and risk management. For the past over 15 years, Juan has built and managed compliance programs all over the world while dedicating his work to supporting the underserved and unbanked and to influencing pro-innovation policy. In 2008, Juan was granted permanent residence in the States by reason of extraordinary ability in the fields of anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. So let's put our hands together and give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you so much.
Juan Llanos.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I'm testing this new technology. 1, 2, 3. Apparently, that's how you do it. Okay. So, do you recognize anyone there? Wait. Probably the gentleman on the top left, most ladies. So these people, what do they have in common? Do you know what they have in common? Can you find a common denominator? So they're all Bitcoin and blockchain fans, right? And for different reasons, they're fans for different reasons. But I don't know if I'm just going to name them in case you don't know. Ashton Kutcher, probably most well-known. Naval Ravikant, the Winklevoss twins, Richard Branson, Mark Andreessen, and Nassim Nicholas Taleb. They have seen the blockchain, as some of us, as a truly revolutionary technology. So, and in May or early 2015, Sir Richard Branson organized a blockchain summit on Necker Island, and believe it or not, I was one of the guests. So, why? I'm still wondering. But the reason is that I'm good friends with this gentleman, Michael Casey, the author of The Age of Cryptocurrency, former Wall Street Journal writer. And he invited me because I had been talking about blockchain and how disruptive it would be and how important it was to solve certain big problems in humanity for a long time. And I was writing also about obstacles. What are the real obstacles to this becoming a reality? So over the years, I started writing and doing this. And the reason I was there at that moment in time is that I had spent 15 years in New York City working with underbanked communities, cross-border payments, remittances, family remittances, right? So I saw that this blockchain technology was going to do two things. It's going to take companies like mine out of the picture, because now people could send value from one to the other without anyone in the middle, right? And number two, it was a potentially very high-risk technology for financial crime. And as a compliance officer, I was very concerned that that might be the downfall of the technology rather than the catalyst for the technology, right? So at this table, you see some familiar faces. You may recognize some familiar faces. But one of them is obviously Richard Branson, who was attentively looking at this gentleman over on this side. This gentleman on this side is a person whose book, The Mystery of Capital, I had read in the year 2004. So 9 years, 11 years before, right? So imagine I was a groupie for Hernando de Soto instead of Richard Branson. Everyone was hanging on to Richard Branson. Take photos. Good, congratulations, you're a great leader. But to me, this gentleman here was more important because he wrote a book, a very important book about the mystery of capital. And his thesis is, do you happen to know Hernando de Soto and the mystery of capital? Well, I hope you do at some point. So I had read the book. He's a Peruvian-born economist. He's an advisor to heads of state globally. Very well known, very well respected. And he has spent his entire life trying to figure out how to end poverty. How to structurally end poverty. Not deal with the symptoms, but with the root causes, right? So his thesis is very simple. His thesis is that capital is dead, goods are dead, goods and merchandise are dead because there's no registration for them in some record that make them a reliable source of knowledge and understanding of the ownership of that capital, right? So capital is dead when it's not registered anywhere. Think about that. Think about the connection of registration of something and this. So in one of the sessions, he calls me the day before and he tells me, Juan, I was the only Spanish speaker on the island, so we had the opportunity to really engage with him. So he folds this, he takes me to, this is what my people have prepared. This is a title to the ownership of a mine from the Inca times to today, right? So look at all these titles, proofs of ownership, right? So the Inca times, approximately 15th century, 16th century, right? So each of these was a real record that had been kept in some form to demonstrate the ownership of a piece of land in Peru, right? And then it had to be certified by someone, it had to be acknowledged as a valid document, and it had to be linked as a chain to the end of time, which is the current ownership. So isn't this an artisanal blockchain, right? He called it an artisanal blockchain. And from then on, I think that you can imagine the power of this technology for many things. So the reason why these people are worried, are really interested in this technology, has to do with the power, the impact it can have on civilization, right? So, and there's one area of study called probably the underserved, the System D. Many people have talked about System D, and I hope that some of you in the audience are aware of that. So System D is the amount of every informal business, any black or gray market, unrecorded, registered, unregistered market anywhere in the world. And it's been calculated, estimated to be worth more than $10 trillion. So that is the sum of every Apple cart, every canoe providing a service across the shore on a stream in Indonesia, every single service, every shoe shiner in every corner of Hong Kong that has no record, anywhere of that business, and the registration of those transactions, right? So this is an underground economy that has been, dormant until now. So, and all this ties into the topic of today, right? And think about this. This is a very compelling set of statistics published by the World Bank. So it turns out that all of this wealth, hidden wealth, dormant wealth, is actually coincidentally in the areas of the world where there's less sophistication in financial services, right? Where people have no formal banking. So obviously civilization is tilted in the favor of the Northern Hemisphere, but there's approximately 2 billion people in the world that live beyond the poverty line, have no ability to save and to trade, to receive payments, and it's all because the world has worked in a certain way, right? And then a few months ago, I had the opportunity to go to the United Nations where I met with Joseph Lubing, the leader of the company that I work with today, ConsenSys, co-founder of Ethereum. And I had the opportunity to talk about same topic. It was a similar situation. And look at all these aspirations that society has and has had for decades, right? Or probably centuries, right? We need to end poverty, right? As a desire, right? We need good jobs and economic growth, reduce inequalities, peace and justice, life below water, care about the oceans. All the things that we as humanity care about through our representation in the United Nations. So all of these are the things that are creating our purpose, the purpose of many of us working in this world, right? Okay. So this is a talk about how blockchain can address most of these problems, right? But my argument and the presentation that I sent to Professor Lee this week, and unfortunately may not have been communicated to everyone, was very controversial. I wanted to give a provocative talk about how we're doing it to ourselves. So it's a question of choice to solve these problems. It's a question of choice, especially now that there's new technology to solve these problems. And my argument has been for years, we were having a talk in our car, in the taxi coming here earlier with my colleagues, is regulatory obstacles. So we need to take a deep look at regulation and how the world works today. And otherwise, there's not going to be any fintech, there's not going to be any innovation, there's not going to be any financial inclusion. It's a daydream, and nothing is going to happen. And I stand and I emphatically say so, there's never going to be fintech innovation. All of the expo that is happening this week is completely a daydream, a commercial enterprise, but it's not feasible unless we affect regulation. And I'm going to show you some things that are commonsensical, that could be done easily if the choice is made. Just a choice, right? Okay, so we have to talk about blockchain and what happened. Why is it so revolutionary? I hope you understand. I'm going to assume that you understand blockchain, but this is the features of the first blockchain that was ever created, called Bitcoin, right? So, do you have any questions about that, or any concern, or any explanation? Is an explanation required? I think you get it. Why is it so revolutionary? Because there's going to be, throughout modern times, the only way to keep track of things was always through some bookkeeper, someone that we trusted with our information to keep a record of the incoming funds and the outgoing funds, the debits and the credits and the debits, right? That is what all banks are. Record keepers, ledgers that keep track of transactions. Why we pay $25 for a bank-to-bank transfer is beyond me in the 21st century. It's incredible, but we still do. Anyway, so this technology was born, and this technology now is able to keep records reliably, immutably, without any central record keeper, maintaining the books, keeping a database, right? And now, also for the first time in history, you can send digital value over the internet without the risk of it being a duplicate. So unicity, digital unicity, uniqueness, was not possible until the blockchain. Right? You send an attachment, you say send a photo, it stays on your local drive, it goes into your email server, gets copied on the receiving server, and it gets spread around many databases. You technical guys may know more about that, but we know that digital assets are easily copyable. Not anymore if they're run or recorded on a blockchain, right? All right, so all these things created a revolution, and this is the reason why we have this conference today, right? So, and then came another type of computer, which is even more programmable. It was created by a person that was here yesterday, Vitalik Buterin, and he basically said, if we can have a distributed ledger to record transactions, a distributed database, everyone has the same copy, every participant is equal, is an equal member of the network, why can't we not have the same with beyond the actual database? Why can't we not record a state, a picture of the situation of a software today at this point it's a second in time? That's called state, right? So something that didn't record transactions of state now becomes a general purpose programmable computer that records the state of a situation in a point in time. So the computer is still distributed, but is much, much more complex, much more potentially valuable. That's Ethereum, a network of computers that is distributed computers that record information and can compute in a distributed way. And these networks has certain attributes and has certain functions that make him create incentives for everyone to participate and act in a certain way, right? So anyway, so this is why these famous people are interested in technology, right? We have a new way of doing computation. It's a system that was not possible before, a creation, an invention that is taking the world by storm, and it can have incredible positive impact, and that's undeniable, and I'm going to go through them, right? So the first one is the property rights opportunity. So if you want, I'm going to give you six projects that could change humanity tomorrow if we decided to do it, right? One of them is this, the property rights. If there's no record keeping, there's no ownership, proof of ownership, and therefore there's no way for that owner to take that piece of paper, that record, to a bank and ask for a loan. Capital is created when there's a record that can be collateralized, a loan that can be requested based on that collateral. That's when capital is created, new value is created, right? So the problem is this, capital assets are dead until they become capital. And that is a mystery of capital. It's hopefully a read that you will pick up soon. It's very well explained in the book. And then, of course, we have incompetence, negligence, and corruption. Rampant everywhere in the world. I was born in Argentina. And in my lifetime, I went through 3 episodes of hyperinflation. My own lifetime. My parents, probably 6. What is hyperinflation? What is currency debasement? Suddenly, you wake up one morning and milk is worth $2, and in the evening it's worth $4 a liter of milk. That means that your money can buy less things. That means that your currency is being debased. And that's something that some governments do without restraint, without responsibility. It's bad for society. Why? Because we have a fractional banking reserve, fractional banking system, and it's very complex. Go online and study it. Problem is that the system, there's a big problem. And then you cannot transfer ownership over a distance remotely. You have to come to the location. I have to go to the bank, prove my identity. I have to take this paper. If you're a very advanced country, they allow you to sign a PDF and ship it over email. That's very advanced technology today. But can I buy a home or a good or a product in Hungary or Sweden? Maybe with these centralized systems, e-commerce platforms, payment platforms, PayPal, etc. But it's very hard to transfer ownership over the internet, right? So now we can leverage the decentralized networks that we're creating. Saving and investment, that's a new opportunity. It was not possible to save, or it is still not possible to save or invest when there's no banking infrastructure. There's no even electricity in Africa, half of the day or 2/3 of the day. And we were talking to people today that were wondering, we have problems with infrastructure, with electricity. So I hear that the blockchain can run offline. I mean, it's like, if it shuts down, it will pick up after the electricity goes back on. It's true, it could work that way, because it's mathematics. Once you really understand how the blockchain works, it's just all cryptography. So you can reconstruct a chain of transactions without power after a certain time. It's complex, but it can be done. So because of that, we have the problem of hyperinflation, lack of infrastructure, corruption, and Federal Reserve-based systems. So now we have the ability to create money on a blockchain. Your brothers and sisters, because you're young, usually if you have an audience of 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, let's say your sons and grandchildren, are going to be able to create a bank in 2 hours. It's possible today. You can create a bank or a fund or a payment system in 2 hours with a few lines of code. That is a revolution that we're seeing today, right? So we have now the opportunity to have alternatives to the centralized and traditional banking systems that didn't exist before. New ways of doing savings and investing, tokens. We have the opportunity now to remotely invest a little bit of money in a project that we support, right? And the remittances opportunity. This is the world I worked with for 15 years in New York. Money transfers across distance. Perfect opportunity, perfect problem, perfect opportunity to resolve with blockchain. E-commerce. You can buy and sell from anywhere in the world and pay or get paid from anywhere in the world. Easily today, thanks to the blockchain. And then one very important use case is renewable energy. So now everything is controlled by an electric utility today, and it's very hard to trade electricity. It's controlled by monopolies, by centralized entities, but now we are able to produce electricity with our own solar panels and sell and trade the surplus. Families, villages can do that should be able to do that. The problem is that the systems are usually priced in a single global currency and not in a universal type of currency that could be the kilowatt hour. So imagine if we had a global lingua franca for value representation. It could be kilowatt hour, and I could sell my surplus to you. I live in New York, and I could buy from you if my algorithm finds that your electricity is fairly priced. We could have a global tokenized economy. That is possible today, and we have dozens of projects like these being incubated. And finally, one of the biggest opportunities ever and one of the number one obstacles to financial inclusion is identity. And the final part of the presentation, it just gave me 10 minutes, could be 2 hours, because I have a very detailed account of the reasons why regulation is a problem. And I'm going to just breeze through it very fast and tell you exactly why it's an obstacle. But I'm just going to leave you the materials for you to read at home if you're interested, right? So the problem with identity is very clear. I'm going to explain it in a minute. now we have the opportunity to create a portable, transferable, personal type of identity. We're going to talk about it in a minute. Okay. So everything is being challenged with the blockchain, right? It's great. It's great that now we're thinking about alternatives that didn't exist before, right? So one of them is record keeping, and I'm glad that Griffin, my colleague Griffin, is here today, who's working on a great project called Balance. In March of 15, I wrote an article for Coin Center where I said that transparency on the blockchain was going to alter the way we do business, and I basically analyzed the purpose of regulation, and now we have, this is the problem with regulation. First of all, it's industry specific. There's regulation for aviation, for health, for transportation, for insurance. If you are within a category like financial services, we have banking, capital markets, payments, asset management. So it's based on the activity that you are performing. It also depends on the jurisdiction. If you're in Singapore, only the Singapore laws apply. If you're in Europe, maybe there's a global federal regulation for Europe, but you still have to comply with the regulation of each country, same as in the United States. There's federal layer and there's state layer. Texas, Illinois, Georgia, Florida, each is a different set of regulations. And this is the 21st century, the age of the internet, right? So that is a legacy mindset, legacy paradigm, right? And finally, it's enforced by intermediaries. So how do you make society I mean, of course, the threat of if you're threatened by, or you're being surveyed by cameras, so you have an incentive to behave well because you're being observed. So for massive surveillance is one mechanism to enforce. But what about the world of payments on the internet? It's very hard to enforce all these complex, very high regulations in a peer-to-peer world. So we have a problem with regulation, right? And because regulation is completely incompatible with the blockchain paradigm. This is the blockchain paradigm. Has no jurisdiction, no limits, no permission, complete transparency. When you're required to be private and confidential, there's full transparency. When you're required to have a jurisdiction to operate, this goes over the internet. So we have a problem, right? There's a big mismatch, right? And this is what I told you earlier. And the next 5 minutes, 2 minutes are going to be all of the things that a scholar like Liesel should study at university, or you should study at university. How to solve these problems, okay? So there's problems with property rights, obviously. There's a break afterwards, so I may take 5 more minutes, right? Because I just got the sign that I have to finish in 5 minutes. So there's problems with savings and investing. You can only save in a bank, at a bank, or a properly authorized entity. That's a rule. You cannot save outside of certain things. You can say, hi, Chou. So, and then we have problems with global e-commerce. We cannot just interoperate globally, get paid. Remittances are a headache. Creating a network, complying with KYC and identification. Renewable energy and identity have huge problems, right? So, and think about this. You now can transfer value globally without identifying you first. The standard today, the paradigm is identity first, funding and transaction second. Right? If you have to make any payment today, what do you need to do? Identify yourself. First of all, you have to have a means of payment, a debit card or a credit card. In order to have that balance, you have to have past identification first. And then you can make the payment, right? So look at the regulation. This is the Financial Action Task Force. The standard is a fight against anonymity. 2006, 2013, 2014, every single policy, like this comes from the G8 countries, the richest countries in the world. Nothing in financial services can be anonymous. That's a global standard. If you don't comply with that, you get sanctioned. You get put in a blacklist. You're treated as a pariah in the global financial system, right? So we have these policy to fully identify the participants in a transaction, and it's enforced to the dot. We just came back from, the Fintech festival today and this week, and there were hackathons and bank presentations, product presentations, and they're all about identity and compliance and records management and how difficult it is to comply, right? So, and this is the problem, that today the standards for AML and compliance are very strictly applied. They're very strict in their policy, in their statement, and they're very strictly applied. And that creates financial exclusion. I'm ready to argue this in front of everyone. The financial exclusion is probably caused by the excessive enforcement of AML CFT rules. And a couple of years ago, we had this problem in the United States. Somali bank accounts all across the United States were shut down, in UK too, because there were some Somali terrorists that, high-risk jurisdiction. Let's block all all of the country, and all of the senders of money from anywhere in the world. What happened? People starving. Millions of people starving in Africa. It doesn't matter. Why? Because AML CFT is more important than other things, right? So financial inclusion and fintech innovation will never happen if this is the single policy goal. Okay? So tomorrow we can have a new way of doing things. We can incorporate a lighter touch. We can do layered approaches to identity. We can do more permissive types of transactions based on the product, based on the destination, based on when everything is digital. We can do new things that were not possible in the analog world, right? So we have to start rethinking about all these things, right? Okay. Same with identity. Countries have the monopoly over identity. You are born because a country says you're born. Otherwise, you're not human. You don't have rights. You cannot sign a contract. You cannot be recognized. You can be stolen and no one recognizes you back. You're a refugee. So there's no portable identity across nations, across the world. Why? It's beyond me, but I was just checking the Singapore law last night, just in case it may have changed. And I went to the MAS website, into the anti-money laundering regulations, and I got confirmation that all transactions, identity is the number one requirement to open a bank account. So nothing has changed. So when you're a fintech, when you're an innovator, you go to come to these congresses and conferences, you come up with a new solution, you will have to encounter these regulations. And these regulations need to be changed if we want to really innovate. So, for example, same with privacy. Identity should be portable, personal, private, because that is possible now, right? And remember the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Poverty, inclusion, it all is possible. I mean, it's very desirable as a goal, and it's very possible now, right? Okay, so this is my point, my final point. I know we have to go, and there's a break. But we have to start rethinking about these things and talk about these things openly, right? So why is the law so complex? Why do we need lawyers to remember the law? Why do humans need systems to remember the law? So this is just a new framework to understand the law that I'm proposing. Of course, I'm not going to have time to go over it, but let's talk about there's policy aspects, stimulative aspects for the economy, there's prudential aspects. Let's operate with caution. And then there's punitive aspects. If someone goes overboard, we have to punish them. This is how we should organize the law, very simply. Let's think of policies for stimulating the economy, think of policies to create a fair and safe environment for operating, and then punish the wrongdoers. That's fine. So one thing that we don't have time to go through is that if you really understand the blockchain is an enforcement mechanism, right? Any software is an enforcement mechanism, right? I mean, if certain things happen, deterministically, other things happen. If there are certain inputs and they're processed in a certain way, a certain output comes out. That's software, right? And now we have this construct of called smart contract, which is a very simple way to program logic within a distributed network like Ethereum. And now we are able to enforce the law. So the new lawmakers are now the engineers. So we're democratizing lawmaking, right? Lawmaking, rulemaking, and decision-making, because now the system makes decisions for us. So why not rethink the law when we have technology that can do all this for us? Okay, so this is the thick part. I have been thinking about this for a long time. So I'm very privileged, very honored to be here, that you're paying attention to me, that the university is allowing me to speak. But I leave you with these things to think about. How things happen today and how things should probably happen in the future thanks to technology. And this is about prudential regulation, operating safely, right? The same for crime fighting, financial crimes. It's incredible how ineffective the systems are today. People don't talk about it. Sanctions are done on Excel sheets. In the 21st century, in the largest banks of the world, they have 50 people checking spreadsheets to see if the name appears on a list. It happens today. Companies make millions of dollars in contracts to automate that, right? So we could do just a simple thing. Financial institutions are intermediaries in the enforcement of the law. So the bank is the policeman. The bank enforces the law against financial crime. So again, there's an intermediary. They're obligated to comply with laws, impose them on the business, and they are liable if something happens. So now, and then law enforcement comes in and they see a report that the bank sent of a crime that happened 4 months ago, and the criminals are already in Tahiti. This is how law enforcement operates today. Well, now you can basically distribute liability. You can have real access to the transactions in real time. The paradigm changes. The same for regulation in general. Very long, but hopefully someone will pay attention to this. I'm just giving it to you. So these are two things that no one talks about. Regulatory expectations encourage the replication of identity because each company is supposed to have a database of their own clients. It's an obligation. I cannot just go and say, oh yeah, I'm going to rely on this company doing my KYC and the ultimate liability by the regulation is always with the company. So there's always going to be a copy of the database for redundancy or for, there's always going to be a replication of identity because the regulatory expectation is too high and the liability is too high. So we have to change that expectation. And then the regulators come to a bank and they're short on cash. I shouldn't be saying this, but okay, now $1 billion on a bank, and okay, that's a fine. So why? And they're not allowed. They don't allow shared platforms. Each company has to have their own database. So all these things are very easy to solve. This is a recommendation. If we start thinking about the purpose of the law and regulation, which is to protect society, have safety and soundness, to protect the consumer, let's focus on the spirit, on the law, and start from there, right? And again, this is a problem of policy, a problem of regulatory expectation, and a problem of enforcement. There's a bureaucracy around the world doing things with an old paradigm without trying to focus on how to do things. And when an enforcement agency or government hires more lawyers, I cringe. They should be hiring more engineers. So, and some of you may know Vinay Gupta, who's a philosopher that I read a lot and I listen to. And he talks about all these things that we as scholars, as early adopters, you are pioneers here, being at the university, coming to this conference, interested in this topic, interested in the blockchain. Look at all the things that we can now start thinking of doing with technology, right? It's about reducing the cost of running civilization. Simple as that. All these things, I wish I had had more time to go over them. It's probably a workshop, a 5-hour workshop, if you really want to go into the details. If you really want to go to sleep, is something that I encourage people to think about. Anyway, so my role has been always to advise companies after being a compliance officer and an executive. So this is the reality for every entrepreneur. They can only do if they match what they want, where they must. They can never innovate freely because there's a lot of constraints that are there and no one challenges, right? So my recommendation to innovators is do innovate, do implement safeguards to make your product safe, and never stop influencing and talking about the bad things. Raise your hand, challenge what you see as wrong, right? So this is my basic recommendation. That's another program that I give where I talk about if you do one of these two things, or two of each, it's not going to be sufficient. If you innovate and implement without influencing, you're just repeating the old paradigm, and this is where we are today. Every company in the FinTech Expo today, every innovation happening in the world today is constrained and will be constrained unless we influence changes in these mindsets and this old way of thinking. If you innovate and influence, you're a lobbyist, an opportunist. You fail to implement, you're reckless. You shouldn't be in the market. If you implement and influence, but don't innovate, you're a dinosaur. And this is banks in general, I mean, right? They're always lobbying, always implementing the top-notch security and keeping the newcomers at bay, right? So in my opinion, responsible innovation has to do with doing the three things, right? So let's think about again, it's a choice. Doing these things is a choice. Someone like the Monetary Authority of Singapore, as they have been doing, or the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK, as they have been doing, could easily decide, now we're going to relax to create a safe harbor, a protection, a set of protections to enable certain innovations. Otherwise, we're going to suspend our judgment, suspend our enforcement until you come and allow you to come out with an option that didn't exist before that is better. This is what should be happening. We should have a new way of doing business, and thankfully some jurisdictions are doing that. But it's all about that, right? And this is the ultimate opportunity. It's about freedom to innovate. It's all about that. Reducing subjectivity. Why cannot a system not enforce a rule? Why does a human have to make a decision and subjectively be subject to being vulnerable to a bribe, for example? This is why there is corruption, because it's a human making a decision, right? I like that phrase. Technology and the blockchain system that is run by an algorithm that is very hard to change, that enforces rules, reduces our vulnerability as humans to the whims of strangers. Because a president of the nation is a stranger, it's not my family. Donald Trump is a stranger to me. So if he has a whim, it affects me, right? Anyway, so that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. And there's one thing I wanted to finish with something. We don't have time for questions, but if you have a question, please, I'll be more than welcome to answer it. This is it. It's about freedom to operate, to own, to transfer, and to innovate. Permissionless innovation on the blockchain. And this is an example of a country that did this, right? There is an example. We are here today. Less than 20 years ago, this was Singapore, and this is Singapore today. So someone made a decision to do something differently, right? The same, exactly the same can be done with all the Sustainable Development Goals, with everything that I showed earlier. All of those 6 opportunities are there. All we have to do is think big and make decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Juan, for a really insightful speech. That's a lot of food for us, a lot of food for thought. Due to the time limit, we won't be able to take questions, but we have coming next around 50 minutes dinner break. So feel free to approach Juan, and also ConsenSys team is here. Thank you very much for coming. And to all of you, enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Yeah. It's there.
I was afraid I might say something in a private. So thank you so much for the introduction.
Hi. Very good. Thank you. I completely agree with that one statement that you said, but unless the regulations change, there's not going to be financial inclusion. There will always be exclusion. We suffer from that because I'm from Nepal and our government never...
Are you for the government?
No.
Part of the government?
No, I'm not from the government. I said I'm from Nepal.
Oh, Nepal.
And our government is always blocking everything, every innovation. So that's one. So my question is, the real question is, so I understand that in the first blockchain scenario, we say that there's always the middle layer of the banks not required. It's always period. So what would be the next time when it's in a perfectly blockchain enabled world, where do people go for loans and stuff? To the peer?
Those networks are peers. What is a loan? Is someone offering capital to be distributed, and they get a margin to get more money back, right? So they have an incentive to lend and collect more. But the source of capital doesn't have to be an institution, doesn't have to be a powerful institution. It could be...
But it's recorded somewhere.
Yeah, but it could be maintained in a secure fashion within a network, within a system that is incorruptible, like the blockchain, right? So we have multiple, this crowdfunding technologies, crowd lending technologies, and that is happening already. There's a network that I advise, I'm an advisor, called RIPIO Network. It's going to be global, RIPIO, global lending.
I'm
You're welcome. What's that?
I am Audrey. Nice to meet you.
Audrey, nice to meet you.
Deeply appreciate your talk because a lot of what you're saying has been something that we've been thinking about in the blockchain and doing actually. So our mission is really to support women like
Who are you with? Are you with the university or the?
No. So we are an impact fund that really solves, we support and fund women social entrepreneurs across ASEAN. We tackle poverty. And
So
your point about
are you
the
making any progress? You will never be making any progress unless you change this.
Yes, and that's what we're doing.
Ever.
That's what
Guaranteed. There's going to be people who are going to make money. Lawyers are going to make money. Conference organizers are going to make money. Commercial marketing people are going to make money. People are never going to make money. You're never going to change everything. Anything. Guaranteed. I can say that in public television. Sorry. Influence your government. Go to the United Nations.
Yeah.
Go to speak in the press. Have...
That's what we're doing. We're speaking here for the next panel.
You're not going to be able to solve poverty unless you change regulation. Good luck. Sorry.
Thank you.
But thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. Let's connect. If I can help in any way,
Yeah,
I'll be happy
would
to.
love to get your inputs on, on the visual.
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter,
Perfect.
anywhere.
I will connect with you.
I have some cards here.
I like your slight pessimism, but
Yes, it's a realism.
It's
realism.
moderation, so
Yeah.
it's good.
But by the way, we have alternatives.
We do, and that's what we're doing.
For every negative, I have a proposal.
Good. I would love for you
and
to see
then-
ours and then see what you think about that.
And then we have technology. We're building technology on the side to be able to enforce these changes
course.
and create a better alternative. I'm just being dramatic for effect. Like like every actor, you have to be dramatic. But there's always hope. There's always hope.
Absolutely. And I see that, so thank you.
Thank you. you. Thank you.
Take
Thanks for
care.
understanding.
No problem. Take care.
I really enjoy that. To be a bit provocative, though, is this not?
Of course. Though, on the contrary,
Yes,
that was the
exactly.
purpose.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose.
No, but you're relying a lot on the algorithm and the sanctity of the code.
Yes.
Right, such that assuming it's immutable.
Yes.
And doesn't need to be hard forked, and it can't be hacked, which we've all seen in the last few months, right?
Of course. But if you have a mechanism like, as Vitalik explained yesterday, when you have a mechanism of a consensus algorithm that's based on economic incentives like proof of stake, it's not based on mining, the network, if there's a problem, can recover much faster. He's explained it in many ways. Obviously, no human construct is perfect. It will never be perfect. But we have the potential to distribute power again to the people, democratize access, democratize finance, investing, all these good things. And the system, the new system that we're building is potentially much better than the current system, which is all about monopolies. It's about, we just heard the gentleman upstairs talk about how Alibaba is controlling the world with their algorithms. So is that value going to the people, or is it going to their shareholders and to their? It should probably go to the people.
No, I don't disagree. It needs to be changed, but I'd love to argue with you more.
Yes.
So I'm the enemy. I'm a lawyer by background,
I'm
right?
happy to argue with everyone.
No, exactly. No, because I love the way you represent a lot of it.
Thank you so much.
But what we're
Appreciate
trying to do the policy side. That's why I want to chat with you. But I come from the inside, right?
Perfect.
So again, on the capital process, I did take one. Thank you very much. I'm going to let them go in,
Let's
but
take
you're
touch.
going to be around, yeah?
I'll be around
Okay, good,
always.
good.
Thank
You're
you.
here tomorrow?
As long as I'm alive, I'll be around.
That's good in this spectrum. You're going to be here tomorrow?
Yes, I'm here. I'll be at the expo,
In the expo, yeah.
and I go back to New York on Sundays.
Okay, good. I'll leave it to the pin. See you then.
Hi, I'm Charles.
Hi,
I'm
how are
actually
you?
studying here right at the moment, and I'm
You're studying here? What are you saying?
business management.
Business
but I'm
management.
actually really into blockchain technology at the moment. So,
Study blockchain.
so the thing is,
Future.
I'm not really interested in the investments or the monetary gains at the moment, but really on the utility of what blockchain can done. So I really love your speech.
Great.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
thinking exactly what are the other sources that I can go to, and even like, because the thing is,
Google. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Well, I can send you someone asked me how can I learn this, so I prepare a 2-pager with the sources that I vetted and I curated and trust. Some of them are here. Nick Szabo. Anything that Vitalik is a genius. You can read anything and understand very clearly what he writes about or he is about. So I have a list of things that I recommend to people to read, like videos to watch. I don't know if that can help you, but I can give you a copy.
alright, sure.
If you remind me, I can give you a copy.
Maybe I could just email you or link up with you on LinkedIn.
Connect me on LinkedIn. Send me a quick message. I always keep my promises, so I will write you.
Just another quick question.
Yes.
Because I've been thinking recently, because I've been following the Bitcoin fiasco and the Bitcoin Cash fiasco, and it really
It's a problem.
struck me in the sense that everyone is out for monetary gain at the moment, and the most who stands to gain are not only the investors but also people, the miners themselves. So at
It's
the
all about
moment-
economic incentives.
Yeah, exactly. But is there a way, or do you see the blockchain technology to leave that side, or to even remove? Because at the end of the day, you need processing power from a
Well,
decentralized
there is already a proposal to change that. It's called proof of stake.
Okay. Yeah, I've been reading to that.
Okay,
That
proof of stake is a new consensus algorithm. So the blockchains, because they're distributed, they need to decide what transaction is next. So how do you decide in a network of thousands of computers? Very hard problem to solve automatically. So the system is, if you solve a puzzle and you're able to insert a number, you get to insert the next block, and you get a reward. That's how proof of work works.
Yes.
But now you're going to have to put up a deposit that will be, withdrawn if you screw up, if you act dishonestly, or if you don't have enough computing power to insert the next block. So basically, there's going to be digital skin in the game. That's why I put Nassim Nicholas Taleb there. He talks about incentives. Humans require incentives. It's human nature. Go to China today, go to Shanghai, everyone's running around trying to accomplish something. Buy the next car, buy the next Louis Vuitton. It's all about incentives. Humans, when they're not very advanced in consciousness, they operate on incentives. And we are a very young society still, in spite of being around for thousands of years. We're still evolving. At some point, we'll reach a moment where we'll not care about material stuff. But in the meantime, in the next 5,000 years, we still require incentives, economic incentives to feel safe, to feel motivated, of course, to support the people that we love. Same thing, right?
So you are saying that
you cannot remove economic incentives.
Exactly.
Anything that is that's why the United Nations doesn't work. United Nations is completely ineffective. Just a group of people, a social club. They pat each other on the back. They have annual meetings. They go on TV. They take pictures with Nelson Mandela. People still are poor. You know?
so
Because they have to insert, have economic incentives and sanctions and incentivize economic behaviors. But the problem is that all these things are run by a few people, by 5 politicians, 5 friends, and they orchestrate the world and they influence policy to gain favor over the next one. So everything is corrupt, right?
I don't want to waste their time. So maybe I'll link it up directly and then.
Okay, read about blockchain. Remind me, and then you can.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Hi, sorry to keep you waiting.
Meeting you. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry if I say something inappropriate, but just I'm saying what I believe, what I think.
Yeah, that's great.
And they told me I could speak freely here.
Sure.
It's I worked 5 months in Dubai. There's many things I cannot say in Dubai.
I think it's really good for enlightening our thoughts from the other aspects.
Okay, that's my goal. Thank you so much. That was exactly my goal.
Yeah, so I'm running a premier focused blockchain community in Singapore.
Ladies.
Actually, pretty much, yeah, we started.
There's women in blockchain. Are you familiar with women in blockchain group?
I'm in the Facebook group, but I haven't been actually interacting with anyone there.
We have.
Do you know anyone? It would be great to
They're
be
not
there.
here today,
Yeah.
but it's colleagues of mine. They're Ryan.
Are they?
Yes, I can
But they're
put you.
based in the Europe.
They're based it's global, so it's decentralized. So people in Europe and the United States, women in blockchain. I will send this to them,
Sure.
so they write you back. You can have a
Great.
global
Yeah, of
participation.
course, yeah. But I'm member to their Facebook group, but I haven't really seen anything around Asia. That's why.
No, it's very new. That's great. You
Yeah,
have an opportunity to be their representative or do
Yeah.
something here.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And by the
Good
way,
luck.
you mentioned about some reading material earlier during your presentation.
Yes.
Do you-
Which one? The Mystery of Capital? Mystery of Capital?
Yeah, the reading material that you mentioned about.
Which one? I don't. Sorry, I didn't get you.
Okay. If you. But,
The
however-
reading. Oh yeah. Send it. Can you please remind me?
Sure. Okay.
Please remind me. Can you please send me the reading materials?
Yeah, email is better. Or
Yes, email. Email is good.
Yeah. And
Okay.
this last question is, you said there will be 5 hours workshop.
Yes.
So I want to hear the whole part of your presentation. Where can I find them?
I have to do it.
YouTube or
Someone has to allow
your
me to do it.
presentation about all your formulas and also things
All
like
these things are in my head in my presentations. I've been speaking for 15 years. You can Google them.
I
I've written about it. No one knows me. I'm no one. But if you want to really have thinking about this, we should have a class here and organize something. I hope the university has a class.
you're based in the
New York City.
New York City, right? Okay.
Come to New York City. We can do. If there's interest, we'll do it.
Sure.
Problem is there's no interest.
Yeah.
Understand?
Well, we can do something with our
Okay.
Ladies Asia group.
All right.
Yeah, very
Thank
nice
you.
meeting you.
You too. Thank you. Thanks so
Alright,
much.
Juan, I'm gonna make this really quick. 1 minute, I promise.
Yes.
1 minute. Okay, don't kill me.
No worries.
I downloaded your book. Great stuff.
Lin
Great sharing.
Chingu.
So I started a company. I sold it. I have some money. I'm investing back into startups.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So if you
But
know of any startups that's doing similar things, that's just trying to elevate poverty through blockchain, please let me know. Because I'm passionate about that.
Okay. Well, I would. You know what I would do? Excellent mission, but I think what I would do is invest in companies that try to fix regulation first, right?
you know
They
of
solve
any?
problems. What we're trying to create, if you look at my thing, is Fintech and RegTech.
Yes.
Trying to find ways to disrupt the systems, create alternatives. So it's kind of a stepping stone, right? You fund those companies, they solve the problems, you change the governments, you vote the right way,
Right.
you encourage democracy and participation. You know, it's a very long process, but those are necessary components to me.
Right.
You may invest something, you may not see your return in 25 years. I don't have that lifetime.
But
I'm going to die
you guys are
before.
kind of like consulting company too, right? It's not really.
We have a
in-house
ConsenSys. ConsenSys has a lot of consulting, a lot of advisory work. They're trying to build in the ecosystem. It's very broad in services. My work is less consulting now. I used to do for a living. I only have very few clients now, or advisory roles, or help people make decisions and build products. But I'm trying to build something in this environment, which is fantastic. ConsenSys is a brilliant company.
Yeah,
But
right.
good luck. Thank you so much. And thanks for you. If you want anything, just
Yeah, right.
remind me. Okay? Thank you. Bye.
I want Jeff.
How are you?
I'm
How are
doing
you,
great.
Jeff? Thanks for the
You've been very
patience.
patient with
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks for waiting.
There's a couple
Thank
of
you,
questions. Vinay is here now, or
I haven't seen him
but I mean,
today.
he is now in Singapore.
Vinay Gupta? I don't know.
No. Vinay Mohan.
Mohan? Yeah. He just walked in.
He just walked in. Okay, great. So I want to meet him.
I saw him.
I live it. I met Joseph a few months back. He said, "Got to go see Vinay," and I haven't had time to do it. So
He was right here 2 minutes ago.
great. Okay.
Right? You saw I saw him walk in, but he walked out.
So he is around somewhere.
He's
if you
around.
happen to see him, I'll look for him. I do a number of things, but anyhow, I do a lot of work in Africa on vitamin mineral deficiencies.
Wow.
But I also lead a
Interesting.
global nonprofit, the Singapore branch for a global nonprofit that works in the food area, so nutrition, food safety.
Fantastic.
And we're going to have our 25th anniversary next year. Blockchain and food strikes me as a topic. I don't know if you have any way to recommend.
There is ways to improve the supply chain, or track the supply chain, the provenance of produce and
right,
merchandise.
where it all goes through the system.
Exactly, and
sources
what
and
is
all that
safe,
stuff.
the sourcing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of supply chain products and companies working to solve this problem.
Yeah, I
So
noticed-
there should be an
I noticed
application.
Unilever and just signed up something with IBM.
There's one called Sweet Bridge.
Sweet Bridge. I'll look
It's a
for it.
supply chain, but they're mostly focusing on global shipping.
Yeah, shipping. This is not really ours.
Yeah.
So we're a scientific organization. We're looking for scientific issues.
Provenance.
And how to-
There's a company called Provenance.
Yeah.
They're based in Europe, I think, or
Right.
in the Netherlands or Berlin.
Well, try to
And
track them
there's, I'm sure there's companies already working on the,
Great.
like honest production of.
Well, I'm trying to build also a fish farm in Uganda, and in Uganda they don't allow genetically modified fish. So
By law, it's
by
not-
law, yeah. And so,
That's brilliant.
And in Europe they pay a premium for that. So I'm
Oh,
also
okay.
interested personally in Providence, but this is more specific. But I'll look for your. I won't take more time. I'll look for your presentation online, and
Well,
and I'll find.
I think
I'll
I'm
send
gonna-
you also a note for the.
Please
list, yeah.
remind me. I'd love to
I
stay
will do.
connected.
Great,
If there's
yeah.
any way I can help,
Marvelous.
I'll be happy to.
Maybe in New York and January. Great. Thanks a lot. Okay, take care. Have a safe
Thank you so
flight.
much.
Hi, Juan. I'm Razvan.
Hello. I seem to remember you from somewhere. Are we?
Yeah, we've been at the SG Innovate a few times.
Okay.
So I'm on the. I
Smart
used to
Grid.
be- Yeah,
Grid Plus. We have a good product. Grid
yeah.
Plus.
I'm more on the communication side. I used to be with Huawei and Nokia.
Oh, okay.
So I'm more on
Carriers or network operators?
vendors.
Or vendors. Okay.
We supply
The actual infrastructure.
Syntel,
Networks,
they are all my
routers, and.
customers. So we're going forward to, as you know, telecommunication is very good environment. How to break to
It's a
one
huge
guy,
problem.
two guys.
Huge problem. Monopolies in telecommunications are huge.
So
Very hard to break. But there's people that are working.
yes,
They're
I know. So that's why I need to connect with ConsenSys.
well, find people in ConsenSys that are working on this thing.
Communication side.
Communications. I've been there for 8 months and I haven't seen anyone working on exactly that. But I'm sure there will. I mean, we get a lot of new projects coming in every single day, every week. Someone will probably deal with that.
Next few years, 5G is coming.
Yes, of
So
course.
how they're gonna change things? Whether it's gonna be a silo system again or change, I don't know yet.
It's a good
It's-
question.
it's
We should
not there
we
yet.
should propose an alternative.
Yeah, that's why.
Do your research.
Yeah, the Korea and Japan will go on first. So it will be in mostly this region. So let's see if ConsenSys grew more entity in this region.
We have an office here with Vinay Mohan.
Yeah, yeah.
We have an office in Shanghai building, a group in Sydney, someone from Manila. So there's a bit of an Asia presence right now being built.
Yeah. It's not in Malaysia yet. No. Yeah.
I think the base is going to be
in Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's close enough, right?
Close enough.
It's a short
I'm
flight.
here, 50%.
There you go. Kuala Lumpur?
Yeah, Kuala Lumpur. Okay.
Very
Thanks
nice to meet you. Thanks
Keep
for
in
your
touch.
feedback.
I'll go online to find more.
Yeah, I'll put it on Twitter today after this.
Thanks.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Hi there.
Hi, Juan. Manish.
Thanks for your patience.
No,
How are you?
thank you for talking to all of us. Appreciate it. Must be tiring.
No, it's okay. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I found this really interesting because in college I did some work with global health, and now I'm working in government, and I'm an engineer by training, so it's a sort of mishmash of everything.
Engineering government. God bless.
Yeah,
Who made that
I'm
decision?
gonna leave a card with you, and
Thank you.
I think I'm gonna.
Thanks so much. Prime Minister's office. Fantastic.
Yes. So we look at, in terms of strategy, so it's sort of long-term considerations and seeing what are.
That's policy.
Exactly.
That's policy design.
What should we look
You're
at?
the
What
guy
are
to
structural
influence.
changes? Yeah. Hopefully
Go
we'll
for
see.
it.
I'm a greenhorn, so I want to learn more about blockchain. Still new to this.
Fantastic. And by the way, we don't have to do everything on the blockchain because it doesn't solve all problems.
Yeah. No.
But it's an inspiration to make changes, or one of the technologies that can be used, right?
Yeah.
So, good. Keep at it. Stay in touch.
Yeah, I'm going to send you an email. I'd love to get this presentation.
Yeah, I put it on Twitter later today if you want to go, or
Perfect.
if you send me a reminder, I can send you the link. It's always a digital link.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Sounds
Good luck. Thank you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I think I'm the last one.
No worries.
Just saying hello, go. What we do
Oh,
is,
you're here. You were one of the sponsors, or?
No, I don't think we're the sponsors.
No.
I think
Okay. I saw your brand somewhere.
Yeah. So what we have is like a platform to buy and sell go. I mean, it's mainly targeting the unbanked or people that want. Yeah.
So you
I think we're gonna
sell
be working
to people that are not sophisticated.
Yeah,
You're allowing them to.
Yeah. I mean, buy like go in small portions and all those. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
That's a
that they can
financial
save
inclusion
it.
product.
Yeah. And then
Do you have regulatory problems?
Not yet so far. I mean, like because our
Not yet.
product is not like a.
If you become famous
Yeah.
and strong and powerful,
then we will have
someone's
that
going to
kind of
chase you.
problems. Okay, so we should
So
fix that
get
out.
ready for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Can I have a card?
Of course, but what you have to do is try to influence policy, but not selfishly, like my own industry.
Yeah. We gotta do
Fair
what's good
policy,
for everybody
fair
and then-
policy.
Okay.
Fair rules of the game. That's how it should work, but it's hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Wikin or
Watkins, yeah,
Watkins?
why Watkins? Yeah,
Watkins.
but actually our
Doctor.
CEO, yeah,
Technology,
PhD,
science?
yeah, computer science, yeah.
God bless you. I wish
That's all right.
that's
Thank
it.
you.
That's the kind of thinking we need.
Yeah, so we're just trying to disrupt the market and make sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Good
Cheers,
luck.
man.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, sorry to, I'm the last person, but
No. Oh,
you had,
you're
yeah,
here
yeah,
with her.
yeah.
Women
No, we
in
just met
blockchain.
actually, but
Women in blockchain. You're another woman in
realized
blockchain too now.
yeah, I mean, fairly recent in terms of my understanding, but this is
Doesn't
my.
matter.
No,
It's
it
always
doesn't matter.
it's always the first time, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Where's Marvel Stone Capital?
It's based in Singapore, so it's in the CBD area. And actually, the founders also looked at like setting up a fintech ecosystem, a fintech hub. Now they're pivoting that, and then looking at AI and all of that. Like
Take one card.
Yeah,
Happy
I
to
mean,
connect.
I've had like personal interest in it because I'm from India, but and the whole identity thing is so important, and how they like now have the Aadhaar thing.
Of course. What do you think the purpose of Aadhaar is?
But then what I was critiquing about it, so I actually wrote my thesis very recently for my MBA
About
on
that?
fintech
Brilliant.
and financial inclusion, but I was crediting it because it's something.
So interesting.
But then recently, when I had the privilege of listening to the Estonia
Oh yeah,
XPM, but the VP,
the e-citizenship program in Estonia.
and how everything's in blockchain. So I wish that if India had a blockchain, it would be much more like.
Imagine that they could have done it. Well, obviously it was a first-generation attempt.
Yeah.
Because think of the purpose of identity from the point of view of the state, the government. What is it? Fiscal.
Yeah,
Tax. The only way to collect taxes is to know who the taxpayer is,
right.
and where to go after him if they don't pay.
Correct.
People need to be arrestable, and funds need to be seizable. Those are the two enforcement mechanisms that governments have.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an an ulterior motive in identifying people. It's not to give them rights.
And I completely agree because they just changed. They basically made you link your tax ID to this ID now.
There you go.
And now they're making you link your bank accounts if you have, like, if you don't have one. It's
Okay,
different.
because and now whoever is your bank is now benefiting from a new ocean of
Which
clients.
nobody knows who has your data. So that's the thing of privacy. So like now, if you're on the blockchain, you had.
What if
access
there's
to
a
it.
political enemy that wants to go after you? All they have to do is go to the government. And there's no corruption in India, right?
Well, you know us well enough.
But anyway, you see the problems for humanity, right? It solves a problem for
one problem, but then there's
it creates others. So if identity were completely controlled by the user, which is, I mean, we have a system we're creating. It's going to take 5 years to create it, but a portable identity, UPort, called UPort. So you created your own profile. The security is on the blockchain. It's on the. By the way, okay, here it is. The security, the private key to sign a transaction. We have to go. We have to go, right? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Your private key to sign a transaction is here. It's on the cell phone. So as long as you protect your cell phone, you have some backup, have some features of control, you carry your identity with you. You lose your phone, you recover it somewhere else in Europe because you're a refugee. You recover it across nations. So it's beyond jurisdiction. It's beyond the control of the government. You elect what to show. You selectively disclose what you need to disclose, so no one owns the data. Everything is cryptographically protected. So that's a new model that exists now that didn't exist 5 years ago or 3 years ago.
I mean, yeah. They certainly did it, but then recently they were hacked. So not hacked, but they found a flaw in their cryptography. So they were hacked. But
Yeah, that was Estonia, but the system will get better.
And it's only 1.2.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah.
To have because I mean the expectation that things should be perfect is completely unrealistic.
Yeah. No, it's unrealistic.
Like, of course, I exaggerate my presentation, but you can still make good strides in the right direction. Allow for some mistakes. That's why some regulators are completely inflexible. You make one honest mistake and they come down on you. So now everyone is scared and they overreact and they restrict the systems, and now everyone is excluded. That happens in waves. Like with anti-money laundering, with terrorist financing, it happens every 2 years, 3 years. If that's not fair. Why are we at the mercy of a single regulator imposing a fine and creating a ripple effect across the world? So that's how, when humans make those decisions and not machines, that's what happens, in my opinion. Arguable, but let's debate. Let's have it. Let's make a conference. Your conference. Your workshop. Let's have a workshop.
What brought you to be interested in the poverty?
Yes.
There's a lot of different sectors in the regulatory issues and also fintech. But what brought you into poverty specifically?
There's so many things that can be done, that should be done, and the problem is that the poor are not profitable. Right? Even microfinance lasted a very few years. So the Grameen model is failing in many parts of the world because banks get greedy and they start charging higher interest rates, and it becomes more automated, more greedy. People are greedy.
So the more you're in the finance industry, the more you feel that there's more problem that in this area, those markets that really need help.
What we need is to redistribute wealth somehow. Right? Create systems to reduce inequality. That's the only thing that's going to change things.
I'm asking because one of the big reasons that I'm interested in blockchain technology is actually, so a lot of blockchain is very closely related to those developing markets.
Of course. This is why my arguments are about. I spoke about it. I gave a TEDx talk in 4 years ago. It's all about the opportunities to stimulate the economy and allow opportunity access, all that stuff. But it's not happening because regulation is too restrictive. That's the truth. No one talks about that, but that's what happens.
Before you go, can you take a photo?
Yeah.
With me?
Yeah. The memory.
Thank you. I don't see anything. So.
One, maybe the screen is right.
Okay. Here. Good luck. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for taking the time to.
My pleasure. I was invited here. I'm very happy to have been invited.
Great. All right. Bye-bye.
Hi, sorry.
How are you?
I'm Qian from Philippines. So
hi.
I'm
How are you?
I think the main thing I want to ask is how can you help us? I think the Philippines we virtually have no idea.
What do you work? What is your? Do you have any role in some entity or organization? Or?
Actually, I have connection with the Department of Trade and Industry in Philippines.
Yes.
And I want to raise awareness.
Yes.
For this kind of technology. So
we are working with at the Expo today. We had a meeting with a Philippine bank.
But that's a bank.
Yes, but they are trying to solve a problem that would have a lot of benefits with the blockchain, right? So it doesn't matter who does it, as long as the moment you start using the blockchain, an open blockchain, you've already planted the seed of change.
Okay.
Because the system is completely different and requires a different set of controls. Even if you control the network, because it's a closed blockchain, private blockchain, if the underlying data record-keeping mechanism is open, eventually that system will change, will migrate to a more open system. So, okay, you cannot solve the problem. It's a large organization that does it. They're probably going to abuse and charge more high prices, which happens all the time because of monopolies. But this is what we do. We try to educate people about the opportunity, and even if it's a large organization or a restrictive, undemocratic government, they are catalysts for change. They stimulate the change, and then when it becomes easier to implement the system, a smaller company can do it. Because now everyone can download the database and operate and create a bank. Seriously, as simple as that. Anyone can save, buy, and pay globally. So there's opportunities.
So you're saying
and the Philippines,
let it grow.
And this morning we had a conversation with a bank that were very interested in. They have an incredible strategy to help rural banks. There's hundreds of banks that are rural, independent, 7,000 islands, right? So many. Incredible. They have over 7,000 islands. So how do you reach and help the people in those islands? How do you help them pay or get paid? You need networks that work, that are incorruptible, that are visible, transparent, all these things. You know?
So how do you try to promulgate this in the revolutionaries right now that are engineers?
Well, you need obviously talent, new set of talent, you need strategists, you need infrastructure, you need education, understanding, people who are open to learning. I'm not technical, but I'm open to learning, so I can, make the efforts and collaborate, participate, focus on one aspect that no one is focusing on, help the entire system, etc.
Who should we contact if we want you to become a speaker for our
event? If I am I don't have any more cars, but you can find me on LinkedIn, my name. You have my name there. It's easy. You're going to see my picture and we can connect and then we can.
Can I give you my card just in case you have my card? Thank you so much.
Of course. I will go, when I sit down, I'm going to start connecting to people.
Leave it outside.
I'm going to the other room.
Initially, my idea of blockchain.
I
Okay, so
All
it's just
talking.
the banner. Okay.
But we need the mic, so.
So it's here, here, and here.
Okay.
Panel discussion. After this, another panel also must go, right?
Yeah. I think she has enough, but just nice.
How do you come? It's my army friend. It's not.
The guy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Army friend.
Hi.
Very good. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Adrian.
Chris, nice to meet you.
Chris, Miess. Okay. 10x.
You're gonna be the moderator?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So I'm not for 10x anymore. I don't know whether we should update that.
Okay, didn't give it to us. So who are you with now?
The company, I think we could just say Forma.
This one?
Yeah. Should we say
this
Forma 10x C4 or something?
This one?
C4 10x and then, yeah.
Yeah, because the company is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hi, Zirui.
How are we
Zirui.
going to do this?
Hi. Good,
Or
good.
you can.
So I'm going to brief you guys before we start. So I'm Adrian, and a whole bunch of them are here. We have 40 minutes.
5 minutes, like each person, right?
So
Just
the
tell
idea,
what Zcash is and
yeah,
what
talk
we
about
do.
Zcash, and then the idea is to talk about inclusion and how you guys think we fit in. Because there are some people who does actually with MFI.
Does that work, or should I
Right.
arrange
Oh, they're doing microfinance? Okay, they can talk more.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
And you can give your comments.
So
If
we're
you
just
think
using.
so.
It's not a debate.
No.
Yeah,
So
does
it's
that
just
work?
more like
Do people
sharing
understand that,
ideas
do you
and
think?
stuff.
Yeah.
So I was added like kind of last minute.
Yeah,
Because,
don't worry.
I don't really even know how it fits in.
Oh, it's the same.
This kind of.
So it's just preparing and
Everybody about
Of course, he say, why like that?
Some of them are really into MFI.
He almost CFO of this, then now come.
No, so they have their own views on how technology helps or doesn't really relate to what they're doing. That's what we're going to do now. And I'll just sit around.
later got anything more
and you guys take it. So if you can just respond to what you think you bring to the table for underserved parts of the world. They have their own views because they know what they face on the field. Okay. Yeah, because they have their own more practical view of how.
You're from Austria, like one of the world's.
Yeah, right? What am I doing? Yinghui.
Anything goes. I think she's not going to.
I thought she's going to be here.
I thought she's only for anniversary.
So are you guys just here for the Fintech?
Yeah. I was in Hong Kong for last week.
Well, you said you came to visit me in Singapore. Where's the guy anyway? So what? He's going to say 5 minutes, we're going to introduce ourselves, and then what?
And then we'll let them pick one.
So
Wait, he doesn't work for tax anymore.
I know this we just updated it, or rather he updated it.
Well, everyone is the CEO.
Yeah,
and
like
I'm
try to
host.
host.
So talk about what you're currently doing and what you think you can bring to the table for South financial inclusion. Whichever perspective you take, that's fine. So it's more from your company's perspective. And some of them might have some response to certain things. We see how much time we have. So I'm told to keep the clock tight because there's something else over there. Yeah, we have it in 45 minutes. So
That's oh, that's not a long time though.
no, we don't.
Okay.
How like
Okay, good evening, guys. Welcome to this panel on inclusive tech. I'm going to ask the panelists to take a seat because we have limited time and a lot of things to talk about, I hope. So I'm going to make it more informal. So if you want to, you can just move a bit in front. So you can sit by the name. So sit according to, so Chris to the left of me, Debbie, Michelle, Miro, Simon, Zirui. So Simon is beside Zirui. And Chris is come back, so Debbie is going to take this seat. Okay, so my name is Adrian Yeow. I'm a senior lecturer at the School of Business at Singapore University of Social Sciences. Today we have a panel of very eclectic mix of companies. I'm just going to introduce their names. So what we're going to do is that we have 40 minutes now, 37 minutes. And they're going to talk a little bit about what their company does. So there's Chris, Debbie, Michelle, Miro, Simon, and Zirui. And they're going to talk about what they do and how that sort of fits in or do not fit in, or how they think they contribute to this issue of inclusive financial technology. All right? So with that, I'm going to pass the mic on. And
Oh, I'm the first. Okay. Yeah, nice meeting you guys all. Chris used to be with 10x, was their CFO for a long time. Did the ICO with 10x. At 10x, our mission was to make cryptocurrencies spendable everywhere and for everybody, and by that, achieve financial inclusion. Then after the ICO, we got a lot of requests from various people asking us, can you help us with our ICO? And that's why we went on and we founded a company called Iconic. With Iconic, we help people setting up good ICOs with a strong compliance, regulatory, and legal framework. And you might think now, what does that have to do with financial inclusion? We really see ICOs as a way for companies that weren't able to access funding before to now have access to funding, because they came from countries with maybe with not so deep pocketed funds, or because they didn't have the financial framework of getting funded before. Developing countries, and so on, or they couldn't access any VC funds before because they were from a not so privileged backgrounds. So we really see ICOs as it's leveling the playing field. It suddenly enables people to get funding that didn't get funding before, and from our perspective, that is a way that also drives financial inclusion, and that will enable those companies to hire people on the ground, that will improve the local economies. And for us, we want to advise those companies that make their ICOs as successful while still being as legally sound and compliance sound as possible. That's what we're working on.
Cool. So now we have Debbie, and she'll talk a little bit about what she does.
Hi, everybody. My name is Debbie Watkins. I'm the Managing Director for Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa for Fern Software. We provide core banking solutions for inclusive financial institutions. What I mean by that is that any financial institution that's serving underserved or low-income markets, so this could be microfinance institutions, credit unions, cooperatives, and development banks. Our vision is a world where everybody has access to responsibly priced financial services. And by that, I mean financial services that are affordable, accessible, and relevant for particularly rural populations. What this actually means in practice is that in order to enable financial institutions to deliver these kind of services, they need to be very much tailored to specific market segments who are normally very used to working with informal or illegal financial services. I've given a number of presentations here in the past, which has really highlighted the fact that formal financial services are only an optional alternative to what people are using right now. Just because somebody is offering a formal financial service does not mean that somebody is automatically going to use it. They're going to weigh up the pros and cons of what they're using right now, informal, illegal, or whatever it happens to be, and what the financial institution is offering, and then vote with their feet, basically. And so essentially what our solutions enable financial institutions to do is to tailor different types of financial product that mirror very closely the unique and often erratic cash flows of underbanked people who are typically micro-entrepreneurs, farmers, people who have irregular income flows, and actually address the pain points that they're having right now. And this, therefore, enables our clients to achieve more product uptake than they would do normally by offering more classic kind of financial services that would be offered by typical retail banks. We then enable partners and other organizations to very easily plug into our platform through integrated APIs, which then extend the product design capabilities and back office management side of things that we offer with delivery channels or credit scoring platforms or whatever else it is that's needed to actually provide a holistic solution. Our client base is global. We're everywhere from Nicaragua to Fiji, pretty much not exclusively, but primarily in developing countries. Although we are actually working, we have a significant client base in the UK of credit unions and actually a big network of SME lenders that are funded by the government in Canada.
Thanks. And we have Michelle now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle from TBOP. Our focus is mainly on developing software or mobile applications for MFIs in the region, particularly in Indonesia, Myanmar, Cambodia. Our focus is mainly on the front-end onboarding KYC applications for MFIs who are operating in this area. It gives them the ability to perform the day-to-day operations in a more cost-effective and efficient way. On top of that, our applications also allow them, the MFIs as well as the funding institutions, the ability to analyze the data in a much efficient way and provide a better and more responsible lending to this less privileged population. So a lot of our work is focused on working with NGOs, entities like Proximity, to work with the farmers and also to collect data on how the loans and the micro loans are affecting or improve their level of income as well as the performance in their agricultural activities.
All right, thank you. And we have Miro.
Hi, I'm Miro. I'm CEO of Stack. We built a digital money account that replaces a traditional bank account. We believe that you should have access to your money anywhere in the world, no matter where it is, no matter what currency it is. And traditional banks don't necessarily see that the same way. I believe that everybody in this room should be able to open up a digital money account while they're sitting here, while they're listening to us. And traditional banks don't necessarily let you do that. And the big inhibitor that we see to inclusion is often traditional banks apply credit checks and credit ratings against individuals. And for us to know who you are, I really don't need to know what your credit history is. If I can identify who you are by traditional KYC methods, there's no reason why I should apply a credit rating that would prevent you from getting a bank account. And that's really a big reason why a large population of the world doesn't actually have bank accounts or digital accounts, is because credit checks get applied. And the reason why traditional banks apply credit checks is because they're trying to throw credit products at you right off the bat. You open up a traditional banking account, the first product that they want to apply is probably something like overdraft protection. And overdraft protection is a credit product. So we believe that credit shouldn't necessarily be applied to something like a necessity, like accessing your money. So we've built out products and services that allow you to get access to your money, no matter what currency it is, be it cryptocurrency, be it any fiat currency, and you should be able to access it and transact with it anywhere in the world. And that's exactly what we've built with Stack.
Hi, then Simon, thanks.
Hi, my name is Simon Cheong. I'm the CEO and founder of GATCOIN. GAT stands for Global Awards Token. We turn discount coupons and loyalty points into cryptocurrencies that can be traded for value. So any merchant can basically tokenize their points, and then when they launch it on our system, they can actually trade them for cryptocurrencies. So I have no idea if GATCOIN is financially inclusive or not. And I really hate putting like a round peg in a square hole. Or is it a square peg in a round hole? So I'll just tell you what we do and then let you be the judge about whether or not we're financially inclusive. Our mission, obviously, is to get everyone using cryptocurrencies. So I pay all my vendors in India, in Ethereum, in Bitcoin, and it works. You know, I also think that the retail sector, you know, by issuing all these loyalty points that are extremely complicated and never used, there's a lot of waste, incredible amount of waste that's been issued to general consumers. 76% of your points aren't ever used. So, you know, using our system, finally, you've got a way to actually trade out, get some value back from all this mass marketing that you've been given. I just came back from Tokyo. You know, the urbanization is a huge issue. A lot of people going into Tokyo City, leaving the towns on the suburbs. You know, they came up to me and said, can your system be used to help the small shops in the suburbs? I have no idea. Our system will be open. Let's hope that it'll start including people that need it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Zirui?
So I didn't hear you say that you pay the people in India with Zcash. Why is that? Just wondering.
I hadn't met you before.
So I'm Zirui from Zcash. Zcash is the first open, permissionless, decentralized cryptocurrency with strong privacy and fungibility. The fungibility part is also why it's different from Bitcoin. So it's a hard fork of Bitcoin, but we also have the shielded Z address. So it sets the new standards for cryptocurrency with zero knowledge proof. So in Zcash, we believe that privacy is dignity, and doesn't matter if you are rich or poor, and you should have the option to shield your transaction if you want to. And well, also as one of the cryptocurrencies, you don't need to have access to banks in order to use it. So it's also 21 million coins. It's deflationary, so it also preserves value. I'm working hard every day trying to make it a medium of payment for more businesses. Well, I think it's inclusive because we're trying to promote Zcash usage in unstable regions and countries such as Venezuela, Zimbabwe, where their currencies are hyper-inflated. So I think it's a really awesome project.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit, but before he does, as I was listening through, so we have, in a sense, two groups. There's some people who are building a lot of platforms that tries to reach out to what we define, I think, traditionally as the unserved, unbanked. I'm also hearing cryptocurrencies, innovative ways to even leverage off either your lifestyle or the way you want to bank or to raise funds for such kind of companies. And I'm not sure whether this brings about this theme that how do you guys see cryptocurrency and financial inclusion in the traditional unbanked way coming together? I mean, what I understand from the MFI's perspective, as in microfinance institution, is that in a way, sometimes it mimics or tries to borrow a lot of the traditional banking, but tries to make it more, okay, I may be getting it wrong, but in a very cost-effective way to reach out to those people. But here we have is disruptive ways to create new fiats, new currencies, new ways of spending and creating accounts. So if we bring these two together, what do you guys think? How could it possibly, potentially, maybe even work together or clash or whatever? So with that, I let you start.
Okay, sure. No pressure. So I think you had some good points in there. I think there are two aspects. There's the traditional financial system, and then there's this new world now. For us, we see it in a very disruptive, revolutionary way, not so much as an evolutionary point. For many of these developing countries, suddenly with cryptocurrencies, a whole new perspective has opened up. When before, many of the workers, for example, here in Singapore, sent home their money to their home countries, a big part of that money was lost in transaction fees, in companies like Western Union, and so on. Now suddenly, you have the non-evolutionary, but really revolutionary aspect of just sending home cryptocurrencies and not losing anything on the way, apart from the gas price, maybe. So your family or whoever on the other end can just cash out and use that. So that's only one aspect. The transaction fees are super low. Then also suddenly you're not required anymore to have a retail bank outlet in, for example, the village your family lives in. So suddenly the access is also a lot easier. As most of you guys know, there's more than 2 billion people out there that are unbanked and don't have a bank account. Suddenly you don't need that anymore. You just skip that evolution. Similarly to when M-Pesa came to Africa, people kind of skipped the step of having a normal phone. They just directly went to a mobile phone and used their mobile phone to do payments. Crypto, I think, has a similarly strong effect here. For us, and I think a lot of you guys came in after I introduced myself, so I'm just going to say that quickly again. We at Iconic, we really try to help people raise money for their ICOs. We believe ICOs are a revolutionary new way for people to raise money that weren't able to raise money before. That's our small contribution to inclusive finance and fintech. I see people like Roy in the audience that work with InfoCorp and promote inclusion as well. And such companies, for example, I think it's really great that they can use ICO funding that wasn't possible before, and companies like this that we would love to help with their compliance, governance structures, and raise money for them.
So anybody want to pick up on that point? Or Debbie?
Yeah, I'd like to just hot things up a bit and respectfully disagree with some of the things that Chris has said. And agree with some of them too. Just taking it from our side and the clients that we work with, I actually had a conversation yesterday with somebody about digitizing money. And we talked about sort of the aspirations, but also the challenges. And one valid point that was made was that when, particularly inside a country's borders, if you're trying to replace cash, the problems that you have is obviously, of course, that digitizing anything means there's traceability. And unfortunately, the fact of life is that a lot of people don't want everything they do being traceable. And you can't prevent that. But also that with digital cash platforms, somebody's got to pay for the transactions somewhere. Okay, with cash transactions, actually it's the government that's paying by printing the money. And there's a kind of big thing there. I've actually worked in branchless and mobile financial services for a long, long time now. And we've always had the same problem is the business case on a lot of this. Someone's got to pay for this somewhere. And so who's going to pay? And is there a value proposition for them to make it worthwhile them paying? So if you're looking at domestic, there is a challenge there with digitizing cash without a significant value proposition that offsets the fees. I used to live in Bangladesh for 2 years, And pretty much everywhere that accepted debit or credit cards charged me 3% surcharge because their margins were not enough for them to absorb the 3%. Actually, Visa technically doesn't let them do this, but they did it anyway. But what I'm seeing more potential for is the cross-border transactions. And actually, what you were talking about here as well. Actually, just today, this morning, at the Fintech Forum, we were announced jointly with a company called Transfer2 as one of the joint recipients of a grant from UNCDF, which was aimed at enabling remittances from migrant workers to respondents in CLMV, which is Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam. And together what we're doing with Transfer2 is actually connecting their platform, which bypasses all of the SWIFT high fees, so forth, and plugging it straight through into microfinance institutions. And so this is achieving what you're talking about as well, which is making cross-border remittances much quicker, more effective, cheaper. But there is still some way to go because at the back of that, even though they're bulking up their deposits and transactions, they're still having to deposit these things through SWIFT. And so certainly I think with the cryptocurrency where this can really potentially come into its own is cutting the banking equation out of the cross-border remittance side of things altogether. However, and I'll hand over after this point, but the key thing here as well is that whenever you've got something that's being digitized, ultimately it's got to get into the system and it's got to get out of the system. And my experience has been through working with agent banking in many different countries. There is a cost to cashing out. There's always a cost to cashing out. Agents are expecting commissions, etc. The customer has to pay for that at the end of the day. So certainly there's a potential to cut out a lot of the banking cost side of things. But certainly, unless things change dramatically somehow, making it practically free, I think, is going to be a long way down the line.
Cool.
I'd like to passionately disagree with everything that you just said about the fees. The whole reason why we're trying to use blockchain is because, to your point, there is legacy infrastructure in there, and because there is legacy infrastructure at all of these traditional banks, they're riddled with fees. When you have a bank that has 1,700 branches, and when they have 80,000 people working at that branch or at that banking institution, yeah, absolutely. The only way that you're going to make money is fees. So you're going to riddle that account with as many fees as possible. And that's the whole entire opportunity here that we have with blockchain, is that we could get rid of all that legacy infrastructure, and we could get rid of all those branches that no one's going to anymore. And essentially, when you get rid of that, you could also erase the fees associated to those transactions. And blockchain simplifies that, and it almost moves money to where it's a peer-to-peer state, where you erase all those middlemen that are touching your account and interacting with your account and attributing fees to that account. And that's an entire opportunity that we have with the evolution of the technology that we're trying to implement. When you look at a traditional bank account in any of the traditional banks around the world, they're constantly riddled with fees because they have to pay for the people servicing those accounts. They have to pay for the legacy infrastructure, that old technology that's there that they're trying to innovate on top of, which is extremely expensive. And that goes back to the consumer. It always goes back to the consumer. And that's the opportunity with a lot of the innovation that we're trying to deliver here, is that we want to get rid of that. There's no reason why I can't have access to my money without interacting with the bank. It's my money. If I can get paid directly from my payroll provider into a container or into an account, there's no reason why 17 people have to touch that money in between. And I believe that's a huge opportunity, and that's where we need to evolve. And if we don't address that really quickly, we're not going to really stay in the forefront and realize the opportunities that if you can access your money anywhere in the world through your device, and you can transform that money into digital currency, and that's exactly what's happening. And that's another thing that I would kind of disagree with, is that traditional banks are already using digital currency. They've already digitized traditional currencies. When you do a transaction from an ATM to a branch, there's no cash moving back and forth. It's all digitized. Pretty much all of the transactions that you do within your traditional bank account, paying a retailer at point of sale, it's all digitized. There's no cash being passed back and forth unless you're paying them with cash. So that transformation has already happened, but the problem is they're dragging on that old technology and you have to pay for that. And that's the opportunity here, is that when we implement blockchain as well as cryptocurrencies for transactions, we can eliminate all of that and eliminate all of those costly fees that are associated to accessing your money.
Yeah, just one point. I mean, the reason why cryptocurrencies are inclusive is that you don't have a central authority excluding people. And I think that's the big picture, right? It's no coincidence that Bitcoin was invented after the great financial crisis. It was a response, essentially, to the failings of centralized systems. I think you're not going to be able to stop it either. I mean, governments talk, all the time about how to regulate and police it. I think the conversation should shift to whether they can actually do anything about it. So I think the genie's out of the bottle. Guys like Stack and Zcash were all contributing to the usefulness of a cryptocurrency ecosystem. I'm doing discount coupons. He's doing payments. Zcash is doing anonymous transfers. I mean, this whole industry is just moving cryptocurrencies into the mass population. Less than 1% today use cryptocurrencies, but you just imagine the tipping point coming. So anyway, it's exciting.
Yeah, technology goes faster than you can imagine. So with the sampling, the next update for the memory, we reduce it by 98%. And the speed, right now you do a shielded transaction, takes about 40 seconds. And the next upgrade, it would take only 5 to 7 seconds. So you would be able to use shielded transaction, which is 100% anonymous on your mobile phone. So for the traceability you mentioned, government or people won't be able to trace you or monitor you if you use the Zcash, the Z address, and that's happening in the next few months. Also, because with the ZK snarks, we are able to achieve all the things I just mentioned. So that protects people from governments like oppressive governments like Venezuela or Cuba. Why would you want, you've been talking about the system. I'm talking about looking outside of the system. So yeah, I'm very proud of that function that we have, the fungibility part of using it like cash.
I have one point to make. I think the challenge is how ready are the end users, how ready are they to use a cryptocurrency to replace the cash? The markets that we work in, probably, with Debbie, the clients of the MFIs that we work with, they are not even ready to receive SMS as a confirmation of the money transfer. They still need a physical update on a piece of paper that they will probably keep under their pillow. So, I think the challenge for us is how ready is the market to accept cryptocurrency, digital transactions as part of their daily operations.
I could just add one quick thing to that. I also think it's if you talk about readiness, actually the suggestion is somehow that they need educating. And actually, that's really not the case at all. It's about choices. What we see is, yes, okay, smartphone usage is increasing. Yes, smartphones are becoming cheaper. Yes, more people have smartphones. Yes, there's 3G available more widely. People quote various statistics about mobile penetration and all of this kind of thing. You can see maps of coverage, etc. What they don't actually talk about there is how many people have a smartphone in an area where there is 3G, but actually don't have a data plan. It's significant. I've done lots of research on this in the past. The reason is that people like to buy the smartphone because of the status, but they cannot absolutely justify at all having a data plan. So, well, even if they can, I mean, so many people I know personally have smartphones, and what do they use it for? Making calls, sending text messages, taking selfies, and playing games. Yeah, and when you say, well, it's going to cost you $50 a month for data, they're like, why? I can just go and piggyback on the free Wi-Fi somewhere. And so part of the challenge, I think, about the cryptocurrency is people are going to need phones with internet connections. And just because the connection is available doesn't mean that the low-income people, particularly, are going to want to have access to that right now, or are able to have access.
Maybe just to expand on your point, I think for some people it's also the economic necessities and realities that push them into using cryptocurrencies when they didn't do that before. So if you take some developing countries, take Venezuela, for example, where you have hyperinflation and where if you don't spend your money today, tomorrow it's not going to be worth anything. And you can't use it as a store of value as we do it in many Western countries. Suddenly you adopt cryptocurrencies a lot more quickly. And that's another, I think, quite a revolutionary aspect of cryptocurrencies that we forgot to mention earlier. Suddenly you have things like Bitcoin as a store of value when before your money would be worthless the day after, especially in countries with hyperinflation or countries where you can't really trust the centralized government because A, they would manipulate the money presses, and B, the government as such would just print money as they please. So I think that's another aspect where cryptocurrencies can really come in very handily, especially in developing countries.
I'm not sure if we have time, but I would like to invite if there's one question from the floor for the panel, if you have any. There is? No? Take that one. So, I mean, the reality of using crypto and in day-to-day life.
You have to remember as well, how does it benefit the person by holding their own money? If the inflation had gone up, that means they can't even buy that product anymore. When you look at the marketplace right now with cryptocurrency, it is very hyper right now. But the fact is the value of these tokens are going up as well. And it's usually quicker than what's happening in the inflationary markets that are happening. So it is an opportunity. But to be a direct replacement, to transact on a daily basis, that's a bridge that needs to happen, right? And that's the technologies that we're trying to implement here, is that people don't necessarily want to liquidate their cryptocurrency balances to transact. People don't necessarily want to use the exploits of the cryptocurrency to buy a home or to do big ticket purchases. But they do want to do these microtransactions that you're talking about, because essentially if you liquidate the value of that cryptocurrency, you've lost its value. And if you keep it in the marketplace, there's an opportunity to ride that value as well. So rather than liquidating it completely and converting it into fiat and not realizing the benefits anymore, there's an opportunity to kind of chip away at it and use it for your daily microtransactions where your cash could possibly be inflating and you can't afford those products that you're looking for. It's kind of modifying the use case in terms of not necessarily holding everything in crypto or everything in fiat, but possibly holding both and using that leverage. Because right now, the good news story in the global marketplace is the value of Bitcoin, the value of Ethereum, is that it's this good news story in terms of the return. And that's why you see this investment fever and people trying to get into it, because when they look at the traditional currencies that they're holding, there's no value. It's they're holding it for the dollar figure that it's worth, but it's not going to increase in value. And that's the opportunity, is possibly using it as a tool to help fuel you to the next level and not liquidating at every point or every transaction itself.
And I guess to add to that, right now, if you look at it, of course, cryptocurrencies are very volatile, and you see, things like Bitcoin Cash going up by 200% in a day and coming down again. But at some stage in the future, my personal guess is that the volatility of a lot of these currencies, especially say the top 5 or so currencies, will come down quite a bit to the point where eventually we might have fluctuations of equity-like returns, that blue chip stocks go up by 2%, go down by 2% or less a day. And then I think it's becoming a lot more attractive of a proposition to say, especially in these developing countries where you have fluctuations of, or you have inflation of 1,000+% a year, to move into crypto and to keep it as a store of value. So yeah, now you could say, okay, we're not quite there yet, but I imagine at a certain point in the future, it will be more stable than many of these countries out there. Yeah. Sorry? So,
when will it happen?
my personal bet is it's going to be happening sooner rather than later.
I think it actually is ready for micropayments. I think the issue is that none of your wallets actually allow you to do it. The current cryptocurrency wallets, anybody that's holding cryptocurrency right now, you can't transact with it. If you transact with it, you have to go through a secondary or a third-party exchange, convert that currency into fiat, take that fiat, dump it into your account, and then transact with it somehow. So that's the solution that... I'm talking more on like a global adoption scale. BitPay isn't necessarily accepted at all retail points of sale. So that's the thing, is that BitPay is accepted in certain places, but essentially if you want to transact with it everywhere, that's an issue. And that's kind of the issue that we're trying to address, and that's why we've created our solution, is that you should be able to pay with cryptocurrency anywhere in the world and at any point of sale. And no matter what the cumbersome mechanism is behind the scenes, the customer shouldn't be affected by that. If you're holding Bitcoin or if you're holding Ethereum, but you're also holding fiat, but you're also holding a digital wallet that can transact anywhere, you should be able to access that and transact in real time. And that's the solution that we're bringing forward, is that you should be able to access, no matter what currency it is, anywhere in the world at any point of sale. The limitation right now with the existing solutions is that they're not accepted everywhere. So that's the bridge that we're trying to address, is that you've got global points of sale and global infrastructures that are already there. The opportunity with the solutions that we're trying to bring forward is we need to bridge that gap and create a bridge where now you can access the currency from your crypto wallet and transact at those legacy infrastructures. And that's what we're trying to bridge right now.
Yeah.
Right. So as a solution provider, I'll do that conversion for you, and I won't charge you for it.
Okay, thank you very much, guys, for the panel. Can we put our hands together and thank them for the very interactive and informative session? Thanks. One day, you guys will start talking. We are working towards that. Yeah, exactly. Cool.
in the interest of time, can I invite the panelists to be seated? Our next session will start very soon. Hi, Dejun. Hi, 丁丁，见过，上次有来过。
你手挺凉啊。
在这边对太冷了，坐了很久了。
所以我去倒杯，你要水吗？我
不用了。
咱们什么时候开始？
马上就开始了啊！马上。
我帮你去倒杯水。
你去倒杯水吧，马上好了。不用帮我，自己倒杯水好了。Hi Eric， 丁丁。Hi, nice meeting you. Can I invite the panelists to be seated? Yeah, we'll start the session very soon in 1-2 minutes. We'll sit according to maybe this. So this Dejun here, Eric, Jonathan, Mike, and so you prop me in the last 10 minutes. You will prop me.
Okay, I will prop you behind there.
Okay.
And you're hosting, right? You're hosting, right?
Yes,
okay.
I'm the chair for this session. Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Okay. So after this, I'll be ask them to go to the next session.
Yeah.
It's at level 3.
Oh, level 3, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mike. Hi, Mike. I'm Ding Ding. Hi, nice meeting you. Hi. Ding Ding.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
you're
I'm
the
chairing.
moderator.
Yeah.
Good. We're starting what time?
Yeah, in 1 or 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you are ready.
Oh my goodness. No longer Canadian? No longer? No. That was quick?
Thomas and Isaac, shall we start? We'll sit according to this. Using this mic. We'll start very soon. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have one more speaker. This is Mike. Shall we? Yeah. He was in the previous session.
Sorry.
No problem. This way. Okay. All ready to go? Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Ding Ding. I'm a faculty member here with SUSS. Thank you very much for coming to this session, Financial Inclusion and Game Changer. So by now, we probably have heard financial inclusion mentioned so many times. But this session is also about game changer. So I believe the panelists sitting here must be the game changer in the industry. I'm not going to take too much time. I'll just let them introduce themselves first, the company, what do they do, and how they become the game changer in this place. Okay, shall we start with Dejun, please?
Thank you.
Another mic.
Okay.
Yeah, you use that.
Thank you, and I'm really glad to be here again. Actually, I was here in June this year, invited by David Lee. At that time, we were talking about some of our projects we incubated Actually, our company name is BitSE. We are based in Shanghai, and we have already incubated project like Quantum and VChain. Very glad to be here. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Eric, and I'm also from Shanghai. I'm the CTO of Zhongtobang and MediShares. Zhongtobang is more like a mutual insurance company, and we start 2016, and now we have 10 million users in China. It's in a more traditional mutual insurance model, and for MediShares, we want to build this model on the blockchain, and we think it will benefit a lot of more people who is not able to buy insurance, and they can get help from this platform and from blockchain technology. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Chow. Thanks for having us, and thank you to David for inviting us. I'm CEO and co-founder of B2.17. We're decentralized Airbnb, and we're based out of San Francisco. We're an pretty far. We're an ex-Google and ex-Uber group, and happy to be here today.
My name is Mike Kayamori. I'm the co-founder, CEO of QUOINE. So game changer, right? So one thing I can say is we're the first global exchange to be licensed and regulated in Japan, right? So that's a first. Transaction-wise, we're probably top 3 to 5 on any given day. We just had our single largest transaction 2 days ago with the whole BCH and all these things. We did 1.3 billion in US dollars in 24 hours in transactions. And also we did our first regulated ICO. We finished last Wednesday. So I know a few familiar faces who participated in our ICO. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to share anything with you guys today.
Hello. So I'm Thomas Greco, and I kind of have one foot working in Ethereum and one foot helping out quite a lot on a project called Omisego, which is, I guess, why I'm here today as part of the Financial Inclusion and Game Changers panel, because the Omisego project is building the OMG network, which is 100% public, currency agnostic, massively scalable, fully on-chain via the new Plasma architecture, decentralized exchange. The idea is that it will basically be able to support every end user financial transaction in the world simultaneously for very little cost, basically just the cost of running the network. The goal is to enable not just financial inclusion, but financial equity in the sense of equitable. So yeah, I think that it's quite an interesting project, and I'm very happy to help. And if there are any things that I can clarify or anything that I can maybe lend value to other participants' topics, yeah, please feel free to ask.
Hello, I'm Isul. I'm from Gen 9 Lab. I guess, yeah, thank you for the David and Ding Ding for having us today. And yeah, I guess I'm not sure I'm the game changer, but I guess I'm here maybe thanks to the short chat with the organizer about how unbanked I was for a while in London. So I moved to London to work on the blockchain technology 3 years ago, and then I was slightly legal unbanked for a while, and then until the HSBC hired me for the blockchain technology lab, and then I instantly financially included in the world. So it was an interesting experience. And then two things I found is custody and payment is the two things I really needed, but I didn't have at the time. And maybe the biggest enemy I found is the KYC. And then it's a really good thing to have, but I guess how it's how it's done right now in the banking industry. I don't think it's the most efficient way. So with that, I've been consulted my own unbanked experience. I've been consulted Visa card, and then investment banks, and then clearing settlement startup and remittance startup, and HSBC as well, and on the mostly focused on the payment solution and the blockchain-based payment solution. And yeah, so I guess I can share my own lots of different weird experience, I guess, and then.
Okay, thank you very much, Iso. Thank you all the speakers. I heard all of you mentioning about blockchain. So your companies are all building on the blockchain technology. I also noticed that a lot of governments are also promoting the blockchain technology, including Singapore, Miess, also spending a lot of time and efforts to promote this. Also the education of people on blockchain. At the same time, ICO, on the other hand, become very controversial in other countries like China. And so in your mind, what do you see the future of blockchain, and how your company can help to make it more accessible to the general public? How can your company help maybe change people's mindset to get used to this new thing? Yeah, that's my.
So I'll start. That was a big question, right?
Yes.
But before that, because you mentioned ICO,
yes.
and there's so much ICO discussions already,
yes.
but because we just finished last week, I think, and it was the first regulated ICO under the Japan FSA. So maybe I can share that, and then I can expand a little bit more. And please, people, just come on in. But one thing that's, when you look at from a high level, there's so much ICO fatigue, so much fatigue, and the good old days of free lunch is gone. It's gone. So like anybody who raised around like March, April, maybe up to July, it was novel, right? Anything you say around decentralization, it was something that people came in, right? Especially people who made wealth through Ethereum and Bitcoin. It was an opportunity for them to fund the next crazy idea, or also maybe to have a balanced portfolio, right? But those days are now gone. And what we really realized so we only did it 3 days because we knew that the SegWit was going to happen, but it didn't happen. But now there's the cash and all these things. But the resource and effort you need to put in is unbelievable now. So we would do like an AMA almost every other day, right? Ask me anything. And the people who participate in ICOs they're actually much more knowledgeable than we are, right? They would know like other ICOs, our competitors, and they will just like delve you in why you need to raise so much, or when we say we need to raise this much for certain reasons, they will challenge you, right? So all of these things, and so the next day we'll have our CTO talk about our platform, then we'll have our compliance officer talk about how our governance and compliance works. So from that perspective, it's not easy. It's not easy. And when I just look around, there's 200 ICOs ongoing right now. And when a big chunk of China cannot participate, that said, they do it through their family and all these things, but it's not going to be easy, right? And a lot of people are having difficulty raising their minimum. So that's one thing where we've really learned directly from our community. So that's something where anyone who's thinking about an ICO, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. That said, I think everybody should do an ICO. They should, right? I mean, it's an option for you to raise capital in a different way. In the past, you need to raise it from your friends and family, or VCs, or angels, or banks on debentures. So having an option to raise from a community that supports your product from across the globe through cryptocurrency is so disruptive, right? That said, I think people need to be aware how difficult it is now. And also and there's going to be regulation that's going to come in. Just yesterday with MAS saying like, if it looks and smells and speaks like a security, it is a security, right? And advisors who are advising that, they need to be licensed, right? ICO funds now need to be licensed. And so all these things are coming in. And also virtual currency exchanges like us will, it's going to be part of their payments revision, right? So all these things are going to make it more difficult. But that said, I think the opportunity to do an ICO it's something that's truly innovative. So I recommend everybody to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So I'd like to comment on that from a slightly different perspective. ICOs began as a way to allow everybody to participate on equal terms for building essentially public infrastructure projects. Up until a certain point, blockchains were only public blockchains. Ethereum itself in 2014 was funded by an ICO. We didn't call it that back then. We just called it a token sale, but the same thing. And the thing about the Ether token and about all other token sales prior to that point were that the tokens that were being sold had a very, very clear use case. It was for participating in the consensus process for the new public network that was going up. Now it is much more common to have ICOs using tokens that are like meta layer tokens issued on and that will be planned to run on other networks that already exist. For this, then other utility cases, other utility values for tokens, use cases, need to be found. And I think that it is very good for people to try to find ways to raise money that can be very inclusive. And theoretically, you can get people from all over the world to support your effort. However, it is very important also to make sure that what it is that you are selling them for their support and their involvement is something that will have value to them, and that it is not simply a way to raise money without having to do it through the usual channels, which present some difficulty, at least in part, because they are protecting the people who want to raise who want to put in the money, who are being solicited for funds. May I please just make one more point to address your original question about how are the things that we are working on or are helping on game changers. I think that the particular project that I mentioned, the one behind my name, Omisego OMG Network, is a game changer, particularly in the field of financial inclusion, because it is essentially the original Nakamoto vision of Bitcoin. It is essentially the original PayPal vision. It is essentially the original Ripple vision. Even before Ripple was a blockchain project, Ripple was actually a concept for many years before Jed McCaleb and some other people decided that blockchain would be a suitable way to implement this. And the idea at the time for Ripple was to, let me start. The idea for PayPal was to make interconnection between all the currencies that people are already using to allow them to pay each other online. The idea behind Bitcoin was to take this, but then use a decentralized, a distributed computing platform to prevent the double spending problem, which was one of the biggest problems at the time for how do we make a kind of accounting system that we don't need to trust any special party, which can have some problems as people at the 2008, 2009 years remember quite well. And the innovation was the consensus algorithm, proof of work, and then the requirement was that there be one currency that runs on it that would become kind of a world currency, suitable for microtransaction, suitable for very low cost and easy payments. The Ripple vision is, how do we take network currencies, like decentralized currencies, like Bitcoin basically, and how do we, okay, originally it wasn't that, it was more along the fiat side. How do we connect all the fiat currencies and make people able to get in and out in a, okay, semi-decentralized way, with the idea that the issuances of the fiat on the blockchain would all be IOUs, would be debt assets. And one really interesting innovation of Ripple at the time was what's called the pathfinding model, where users would be able to hold any currency that has been issued by some trusted gateway. Ripple is essentially a consortium chain of trusted institutions. And people would be able to pay for something in the currency they hold, and the system would automatically route the money, and then the recipient will receive the funds in whatever currency the recipient wants. Completely invisible to each other what currency is being asked and what currency is being received. And so the OMG network project is a 100% public infrastructure project that aims to accomplish all of these things with every single part of this monetary flow and exchange process completely decentralized, no less decentralized than Bitcoin. So no reliance on trusted third parties, no institutions that necessarily sit in the middle, although there are places where institutions can sit that will help facilitate this. Extremely low cost, fully on-chain decentralized exchange using the Plasma architecture by Vitalik Buterin and Joseph Poon. It's kind of like Lightning Network for Ethereum, essentially. Scalability of smart contracts. So with this architecture, the idea is to be able to allow a farmer in Bhutan who has a mobile phone to have the same amount of financial sovereignty and power as a top-level banking executive has today. And we hope to deliver this within not more than a few years.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Anything else you want to like to add? Maybe Jonathan. So Thomas has mentioned about decentralization. I think Jonathan, you're also doing some decentralized and BNB. So it's all about decentralization. I guess this is the key word for inclusion and game changer.
Yeah, I would say one of the most interesting parts of blockchain is it completely disrupts the economy from the VC part to a true access economy for fundraising. For us at B-Token, we actually considered very heavily whether we would go the equity route from traditional VCs because we're Silicon Valley based and our initial network and connections were all from the big and traditional VCs compared to ICO route. And the reason we ended up going for ICO route is, of course, there's a lot of benefits, like we don't have to give out board seats and so on and so forth. But at the same time, the way we view pricing in ICO is we view it as a distribution mechanism. We're not trying to money grab or raise any type of, well, the valuation is still exaggerated, of course, but nothing outside of, too far outside of a traditional VC round. We view it as the ability to instantly give 10, 20, 30,000 people from the general public access to your economy as well as kind of, yeah, I would say just access to the economy. And additionally, I think one of the most interesting parts of an ICO is the immediate scrutiny you have from the general public. So in Telegram, we have over 500 people just constantly commenting on our project, as opposed to in the traditional VC route, you have 3 to 5 VCs at once commenting. It's really stressful, to be honest, but transparency is pretty key in blockchain. I think you see it in every step of the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. Eric and Dejun, you are more familiar with the Chinese market, right? Especially the regulations in China. So maybe you can share a bit more on that.
Yeah, I think I can share something about how we bring blockchain technology to more peoples. Actually, we have built a system that we have our current 10 million users to aware of blockchains. In our app that we have assigned every user a blockchain address. Although I know not everyone know what it is, but at least everyone see he has a blockchain address, and he will be curious what it is for. So some people will check what is blockchain, what the purpose of this. And the reason that we we use the blockchain knowledge for our mutual insurance platform is mainly for three reasons. The first reason is that it can build trust, because as an internet platform, we do not have very good branding or PR before. So the users join the platform, but they are not sure whether they can trust the company or they can trust the founders. But blockchain make every user that they can trust the technology. So the first thing that we think is blockchain can help us to build trust. And the second thing is that we think the blockchain will reduce the cost. Based on our mutual model, if we compare with traditional insurance, we are only 5% the monies that the user need to pay compared with traditional insurance. And the main reason is that on blockchains, many things can be done, especially the operation thing cost will be reduced a lot. It can be done automatically, use smart contract. And the third thing that we think is that blockchain can help this model to cross the country's boundaries. For traditional insurance, if you build in one country, you need to connect with local payment system, and you have to deal with entities and legal issues. But with blockchains, actually, this mutual model can share between China or East Asia countries. I think with these three advantages, this model can benefit, especially for many developing countries who do not have much commercial insurance for the people. So yeah, that's some of my share.
Thank you, Eric. Dejun, anything to add?
As we know, the China government, they banned the ICO on September 4th. Maybe that, I think that was really a big news, right? But from my perspective, last year, even maybe late last year, no one can imagine ICO can be so popular this year. That really is the reflection of our theme today. It's the game changer. You know what is game changer? Something we really cannot imagine that really happened today. That's the spirit of game changer. And actually, we have been working in this industry for about more than 3 years. We are trying to do a lot of things based on the basic knowledge of blockchain. We actually in Quantum we are trying to define economy on blockchain. For VChain, actually we are trying to build another collaboration platform for the whole business world. But recently, actually I'm thinking about something related to finance. Many institutions, in financial institutions, they are really interested in blockchain technology. R3, they build a kind of quarter, and a lot of very famous institutions, they are really interested. But I think they are just doing it wrong, because they are trying to use the technology to change their current business process. Just like if we have, just like when we have the technology of information technology, we're just trying to change the post office instead of building another totally new system like the email. So I'm thinking about finance recently that maybe we can do something different, in a different way. Today we have a lot of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other coins. A lot of coins, maybe thousands of, a lot of coins. but we call it currency. But today, actually today's financial environment, we call it financial environment. It's not only the currency. It's a kind of relationship between the people, relationship between the different participants in the economy. So maybe we need to build another layer on top of the currencies that can provide the different functions, like the financial functions. That's not the only. That's not the currency can do only. We need to provide more functions on it. I haven't got any conclusions yet, but these are the thinking I have recently, and maybe I believe that will be. We can call it the email in the Internet of Things. In email in the Internet of Value. We need to do it in a different way. Not only build the currencies. Maybe in the next level, we need to build the finance. We can call it crypto finance or something. When we have that, we can have an infrastructure. When we have the infrastructure, then we can have more applications. I believe when today we are talking about the applications, it's a little bit, we are really in the early stage of blockchain, just like maybe 90s of last century, when we are talking about the internet. We can never imagine maybe in 2010, we can have some technology of mobile payments. It's really hard to imagine. So I think we will keep doing this, and we are trying to make the thinking to the next level.
Great thinking. Anything to add, Isa?
I'm actually, maybe taking this opportunity to ask a question to actually Thomas. Can I?
Maybe in the interest of time, can I open the question to the floor and invite the audience to ask questions?
So
she wants to ask. Yes. You want to ask a question? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Myself looking into the Omiseco technology quite a lot because I'm really interested in the payment solution, and also another organization I'm involved in, the BPK, our crypto fund based in Korea. We also partner the Omiseco, so I'd love to hear more about actually the future milestone and plan, because it's really important to hear about the game changer, or what can be the game changer look like.
The future of blockchain.
Milestones are get the network up and running, scale it, enable fiat gateways to operate, enable lots of them to operate. This isn't in any of the documentation that I've seen, but there's definitely a lot of logical interest in collaborating with currently existing centralized exchanges, because actually decentralized exchange and centralized exchange, when you really look at the separate functionality, they go quite hand in hand. Also looking at collaborations with other decentralized finance, like Ethereum-based projects. I don't want to, upset the internet by naming names, but at least one of them is in the room right now. So I think that one thing that people are really excited the most about OMG Network's milestones is the Plasma architecture, which Joseph Poon, the creator of Lightning Network, and Vitalik co-wrote. Plasma basically enables smart contracts that are simple to scale basically infinitely, and the OMG Network is basically using Plasma. It's a Plasma chain for decentralized exchange. It's just kind of like a single point of execution exchange that can theoretically, when it is finished, handle every single transaction in the world simultaneously when you take out things like derivatives and futures trading, which may actually not really be suitable for full reserve, like fully on-chain decentralized exchange anyway. So yeah, I wonder if this answers your question. If you would like me to say anything more, and like,
yeah, I can add a little bit as well, because I think I'm more of the old statesman here, right? And not everything could be decentralized, and it shouldn't be, especially in finance, where it touches fiat, where there's so many regulatory restrictions on everything from derivatives to exchanges to just moving money and all these things. And I think it will be a little naive where when you actually look at all these ICOs, it's all like decentralized something, decentralized something. That's it on the exchange side. I think we're cohabitants, right? There's a need for a decentralized exchange. At the same time, there's a need for a centralized exchange, especially maybe from a regulatory perspective or high performance, low latency. When you look at the mainstream finance coming in and they need custodian and they need prime brokerage services. So from that perspective, specifically on exchanges, there's an opportunity for both, which is going to be bigger. I believe in our opportunity, but it's going to be big. That said, on the finance side, we should not underestimate, like I just talk with the FSA almost every day. I mean, they call us, right? Like all of our ICO, we provided the entire list and the age and where they live and everything, right? And so when you start providing financial services in mass, it will touch many governments and many of the regulatory bodies. And so that's something when we all go forward, when you look at the future of finance, you cannot underestimate that part. And we don't know how it evolves, right? So that's the beauty. As I think you mentioned, a year ago, the term ICO was not there, right? I think in another year, there's going to be equity tokens. There's going to be opportunities at multiple layers that we haven't imagined. And then you think about it in 10 years, it's going to really change. That said, governments won't go away, right? So I think that's the part where we all need to be cognizant when we try to build the next big opportunity, especially in finance.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Jonathan, anything? Oh, Chou.
Yeah, I just think the debate between centralized entities versus decentralized entities is extremely interesting. And of course, we're trying to decentralize an existing centralized entity. So it's ironic to say that when we decide on who we partner with, we often look at the trade-offs between using a decentralized service, which is not as mature or fast or low latency as a centralized service. And it's just very ironic that it's true that certain centralized things are better in some cases.
Yeah, there's always a trade-off. Yeah. So maybe we just invite one question. Anyone have a question? Any burning question to ask? Then if not, oh. Go ahead.
So not in the context necessarily of funding or investing in various different projects, but from the context of simply allowing fiat to exist in a decentralized fashion. Well, fiat already exists in the form of digital money. It has for over a decade. that has been available to consumer use. And the penetration of digital fiat was, until quite recently, the success story of M-Pesa in Kenya. And now in East Asia, it's everywhere. People using WeChat Pay and Alipay as just two very well-known examples. Hundreds of millions of people use this. So I forgot to mention that the company that is building the 100% public, it's a public good network, OMG network, the company Omisego is actually, the history is as a payment gateway, a payment processor. And the utility of putting fiat currency on a blockchain or on blockchains is immense. And so essentially what is being provided is infrastructure for existing digital money solutions, which largely exist in silos, for a way to interoperate. These digital money solutions, which serve hundreds of millions, actually in aggregate, potentially over 1 billion already, are already all licensed and approved by their respective governments and jurisdictions.
I guess it would be really interesting to talk about the banking perspective from the, I was inside a bank working on the blockchain technology, building a blockchain solution. And then it's really interesting, the couple, last year, it was taboo to mention the Bitcoin inside the banking industry. So if you mention it, then people starting chasing down. and then now, the couple months ago, I was in the meeting with the Deutsche Börse Group, which is the biggest European clearing settlement company. They shared, I think it's not confidential anymore. So what they shared, some project was the clearing settlement solution, but they now adopt the coin in their solution, which shouldn't exist for another half year, but now they're adopting the coin concept in their own solution as well, because they realized why the Bitcoin was invented, and then they started adopting it. So I think it would be really interesting to see how the existing financial institution adopting the Bitcoin technology and then the public blockchain technology and more, and then trying to remove themselves from the ecosystem as much as possible, that they need to admit where they should be, and that they found maybe new business model. At the same time, all these public blockchain technology people and then the startups, they don't realize yet how costly the compliance issue will be. So they have to, I think, they prepared a lot of concern and then, I think the tension on this compliance side, because the only reason the current financial banking system is where they are right now is mostly based on the regulation as well. So thinking that the inefficiency actually coming from the regulation, so maybe if we comply, to follow the compliance more and more, maybe we might be in the same place. So we need to really process about how we deal with, I don't know, this conversions in between the private blockchain technology and the public blockchain technology.
Thank you very much, Iso. Given the constraint of time, probably we have to stop here, but there's another session after this at level 3.17, same place, but one level up. They will continue to discuss about inclusive blockchain, so you can join them after this session. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's put our hands together to thank the panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having us. Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you, Mike.
Because it's like all
Yes.
How
are you guys? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for organizing.
Thank you all for very interesting discussion.
Thank you.
If it's blockchain, it's okay. I feel mine might be squeezed as well.
OK，那我就先走。
Exchanges are.
要去听后面的了。
我今天赶飞机。
哦，今天就要走。
对，
这么快啊？
我今天晚上12点10分的飞机。
哦，现在还来得及哈，8点多，还有时间，不用着急。你这次过来这么短啊？
因为回去还有点项目。这2天他们我不知道那说那怎么样了，我们有一些初步的想法。
没有，家里没写。
对，好啊。
Three initiatives, right? Miro and
management.